Services Marketing, MKT 625. Lecture number 4.
Assalamu alaikum Khawateen Hazrat. This is Wasim Ahsan, your course instructor for the course on Services Marketing MKT 625 at the Virtual University of Pakistan. I welcome you to lecture number 4 of the course. In the previous lecture number 3, there were 2 important lessons to be learned. One was about the tangibility spectrum and the other was about the characteristics of services. You will recall that the tangibility spectrum is all about different products and industries sitting on that spectrum in relation to their characteristics. So in other words, we have 2 different ends of the spectrum. The one end is about the search qualities of different marketing products, could be tangible products, could be services, and the other end of the spectrum is about pure services with experience qualities. So this also provides us with an opportunity of remembering that we are dealing with 2 different kinds of products, broadly speaking, the one with search qualities and other with experience qualities. The ones with search qualities are the tangible products, and the others with experience qualities are the intangible products. And depending upon the level of tangibility or the level of intangibility, we have different products sit on that spectrum. I also pointed out for you guys to think for yourself about the different products as to how they would sit on that spectrum, so that you can realize how intangible those are and how important it is for people like you to undertake the marketing efforts from the typical standpoint of services marketing. The other lesson that we learned during that lecture was about characteristics, like I just pointed out, and the characteristics of intangibility, inseparability, variability, and perishability are the 4 ones which we really have to be master of. And in relation to the place of different services on the tangibility spectrum, we look into these characteristics. In other words, we tend to draw relationships between different products and the level of the characteristics inherent in those products. It is very obvious that not all the products, meaning service products, have the same level of tangibility, inseparability, and other 2 characteristics. Different products are characterized by different levels and degrees of these 4 characteristics. It could be just one, it could be a couple of those, or it could be a combination of all of those. But the challenge here is that these characteristics, when viewed in the backdrop of the tangibility spectrum I was talking about, raise many questions. And we need to have answers to those questions. Those questions lead to certain challenges. You will agree with me that we have a challenge of intangibility, and intangibility causes uncertainty and risks. It, as a matter of fact, presents a certain level of risks to customers while they go through the process of pre-process. In order to diminish that risk and the level of uncertainty inherent in a service product which is highly intangible, which you cannot see, you cannot feel, and you still have to buy that, you, as marketing manager, have to diminish that uncertainty and risk. And that is where the challenge lies. We also know that the characteristic of variability offers us the challenges of standard operating procedures. We've got to have very highly standardized procedures for all those products that involve a lot of application of simple mechanistic procedures which have to be in place in order for us as marketing managers to deliver services of quality on a consistent basis every day and every time. We also have the challenge of inseparability, which makes it important for us to have people who can be trained and motivated to deliver services while performing more than one function. You will recall the inseparability demands that one person must be able to perform all the functions of marketing while he is delivering that particular service. When I talk about all the functions, I basically refer to operations and marketing and sales, because these are the ones which are executed right at the point of action. So having known this challenge, we've got to come up with the right kind of strategies in relation to human resource, in relation to other resources like the finances required to have the kind of resource, the human resource that we require, and any other associated resources about which I will be talking in detail later. We also have the challenge of the perishability, which makes it essential for marketing managers to be able to develop an equilibrium between different periods of demand, meaning lean period and peak period. In lean period, you have a low level of demand, and you have to push demand toward that period in order to make your operation viable. So knowing these characteristics, we can easily assume that not all these characteristics are present inherently in all the services products of the same degree and of the same level. In other words, there are different degrees and levels of the presence of these characteristics in different products in relation to, of course, where they sit on the tangibility spectrum. You are not to lose sight of the tangibility spectrum, because that is always going to evoke very selective questions on your part, whether the product is more tangible or less tangible, or more intangible or less intangible. Having learned all this, we have to take a look at something which experts call classification of services. So in other words, in order to get answers, convincing answers to the characteristics in relation to the tangibility spectrum, experts say we have to look at different levels of classification of services. And only after having taken a look at the classification, we are going to be in a position to bring into play the required variables of the marketing mix for the services that we are selling. These levels are, number one, the nature of the organization. Number two is the nature of the service or the services you are selling. Then the customer relationship. Then the level of demand. Then the service package that you may offer to satisfy needs of your customers. And then the delivery method, meaning the way you deliver your services. Let us now talk about these levels of classification one by one in an orderly manner. First of all, the nature of organization. There are two important aspects to the nature of an organization. One is the purpose of the organization. Now, the purpose is something which explains why an organization exists as an entity, meaning this relates the need fulfillment dimension of the customer side. An organization exists because it wants to satisfy certain needs, and it wants to come up to certain expectations which the customers have of the service that you sell. So the purpose is all about the values and objectives of the organization. The second important aspect is the setup. Setup is all about people that you have in the organization, and it is a collection of those people that an organization comes into being. People work with each other, and in collaboration with each other, in coordination with each other, they strive to fulfill certain objectives of the organization. May those be qualitative objectives or may those be quantitative objectives. The objectives have got to stem from the purpose of the organization, and the setup of the organization has got to be such that it can fulfill that purpose. The purpose of a fast food restaurant is to satisfy needs of individuals and families. The purpose of an insurance company is to satisfy needs of individuals as well as the corporate customers. The buyers selling different kinds of insurance policies. To individuals, an insurance company might sell life insurance as well as general insurance by insuring your physical hard assets. By the same token, a bank sells money, and the purpose of a bank is to have money in the bank so that it can give that money to all those individuals and corporate customers who need that money. The important point is that all these organizations operate from one standpoint, and that is of profitability. Conversely, you have non-profit organizations or not-for-profit organizations, the motive or the objectives and values of those organizations are very different. Those are not commercial. They do not exist for profit. Their purpose is to serve the society. However, they also need to have a setup. And the setup those organizations have is very different from the ones that are geared toward making profits. But nevertheless, a charity, for example, also needs to have marketing staff that can generate donations to make that entity a viable proposition. So what I'm saying is that for different kinds of needs or with different purposes that organizations exist to satisfy, there are different kinds of setups. I can give you one more example of a different kind of a setup. Look at hotels, for example, or a similar organization selling similar kinds of the services. The importance of support staff in a hotel management is very high. It is not that line managers are not important, but support managers in many of the situations emerge as even more important persons. Why? Because hotels have to have very standardized procedures, and hotels deal with so many different kinds of mechanistic systems that support staff that has to give guidance to the line staff in so many different kinds of situations. You know the difference between support staff and line staff. Well, line staff, or for that matter, line managers, are the ones which are responsible to get results for the organization. Those could be marketing people, and those could be the people working on the operation side. Whereas the support managers are the ones who also belong to similar departments, but then their function is to give certain guidance in terms of systems and procedures and also strategies to line managers in order to achieve the common objective, which is the goals of the company. The support staff has gained very high importance with the advent of the information technology that we deal with nowadays while we sell our services. The employment of technology could be very high, and as a matter of fact, it can vary from very high to medium to low. So depending upon the employment, the level of employment of technology, companies generally decide as to what kind of support staff they need to have. It is not just the employment of technology, it also is the other techniques in the fields of the marketing and operations that really necessitate for organizations to have support staff. My point here is to explain that there are different kinds of setups in order to fulfill different kinds of needs. And we've got to be clear about the kind of setup that we need to have for our organization. And in order to do that, in order to be clear in our mind about that, we need to know very clearly the characteristics of the service or the services that we sell, meaning the degree or the level of the presence of one characteristic or a combination of different characteristics that come into play while we develop our service or while we sell our service. Different setups or different structures are the hallmark of this the marketing practice, and we've got to understand what really a structure is. Well, a structure basically is a system of task and reporting relationships that really enable staff members to interact with each other in a very organized and orderly manner. They coordinate with each other their efforts in order to strive collectively for the common objective of the organization. It is so many different kinds of relationships, of which activities and tasks are further divided as small minor steps that take very important roles. And because of the people orientation, these tasks get performed. The main point here is that the setup or the structure of the organization has to stem from the purpose it has laid for itself. Now, how do we develop that structure? It's very important to look into. Well, a structure is a function of so many different factors, and there are 4 different determinants of the structure of an organization. It is not just the characteristics, it is not just the fact that where on the tangibility spectrum your service sits. it is so many other determinants, of which external environment takes the lead role, followed by the strategy that you employ, followed by the level of technology that you employ, and followed by the human resource that you put together to come up with the final structure. Now, let's try to understand what external environment is and how external environment comes into play when you develop a structure and a kind of structure that you should be developing for the services that you are selling. I would like to explain this phenomenon by dividing the environment in two different ways. The one could be an unstable environment and the other could be stable environment. Let us start talking about the unstable environment, which offers us managers the bigger challenges. An unstable environment, or for that matter, which is very challenging, which is complicated, or which could be sophisticated, because complications lead to sophistications. And this kind of an organization has a very different kind of structure owing to the external environment that happens to be unstable, tough, challenging, complicated, sophisticated, however you may like to put it. The fact remains that in this kind of an organization, given the external environment, which is turbulent, you've got to have relationships which are informal. You've got to have very quick communication in relation to changing the strategies or in relation to the dynamics of the marketplace. And you need to make quick decisions. Under these circumstances, what organizations generally do is to come up with a structure which is not very highly centralized. In other words, which is decentralized. And decentralized with the specific purpose of making quick decisions by having quick and quicker communication. The dynamics of a tough situation demand that people interact with each other immediately. And the reason you like to go for a decentralized organization is because people who are at the helm are in a better position to make these decisions. Now, why I talk about the people at the helm? Because we, in many cases, are dealing with companies, organizations, or services which are very international in their character. When you're working for a multinational corporation and you happen to be a local manager, the decisions under these circumstances have got to be made in a very localized manner, because you understand the external environment, which happens to be tough, much better than the people who are sitting in the regional office and who may like to call shots for your market. But that is going to be counterproductive, because they're not the people who fully understand the mechanics and the dynamics of your market. The decisions, therefore, have got to be taken immediately after taking into consideration different variables which are at play or which are having an interplay, and therefore you as local managers must be the one to make those decisions, and therefore in turn your organization has got to be decentralized, that is in a position to respond to the changing strategic situations immediately, on time. It is only because of this that you can optimize the resources of the organization by offering a price which is workable under a given tough situation, by carrying out certain promotions which are compatible in response to the changing situation, or by getting into other moves and maneuvers which are very compatible with the changing situation. It is therefore very important to have a decentralized organization under these circumstances. Let us talk about the hospitality industry. Suppose you're working for a hotel and you preferably will not wait for a decision imposed upon you by the regional office because of the reasons that it just spelled out. And again, because of the reasons that I gave you, you would like to get into a localized kind of a decision so that you can respond to the strategic modifications in an orderly and in a timely manner. If the environment, conversely, is stable, this is not the case. And the structure of the organization can be highly centralized. I would again give you examples why I say this, but what we have to keep in mind is the mechanism of decision making, or the need to have informal and formal communications in a very strategic perspective. If there's a need to have quick communication and the environment is changing fast, it is very tough. And like I said, then the structure has got to be decentralized. And if the environment is stable, conversely, then mostly structures of the organization are centralized. Why centralized? Because under these circumstances, you're dealing with products which are not really prone to recession. I mean, their demand is not really prone to recession, and their systems and procedures are in place, and systems and procedures are such which were decided much before you started implementing those. Those are the standard operating procedures which come into play. Now, this is not to say that standard operating procedures they do not come into play when you are dealing with an unstable environment, that working for a five-star hotel. It is not to say that. What I'm saying is setups where systems and procedures are simple, straightforward, and those are carried day in and day out for products which are of basic nature, like courier services, for example, or fast food restaurants, then you do not really get into the kind of strategic modifications which you may have to get into while you are dealing with products prone to strategic moves. And therefore, you do not really need to have a decentralized organization. You, as a matter of fact, need to have a centralized organization which is controlled remotely. You may have a regional office which is controlling a few countries in your part of the world, and the systems and procedures are a given set of mechanism which is highly mechanistic and which is followed day in, day out in the same manner everywhere and anywhere. And therefore, there's no need to have a decentralized organization. There is no need to have changes in your strategies every now and then. It is something very straightforward, and all you need is take care of the variability and the factor of inseparability, meaning your people have got to be in a position to keep the functions of operations and marketing together and deliver a service in a very professional, efficient manner. And also at the same time, your service must not be variable. It must not vary from time to time. It has got to be very consistent each time and every time you deliver it. The point here is that different structures have different requirements. We've talked about centralization, decentralization, and why centralization versus decentralization. Now let's talk about requirements. There could be so many different requirements, but let us confine ourselves to the training aspect for the time being. If you have a decentralized kind of an organization, you may like to initiate training programs. Don't forget the internal and interactive marketing side of the services marketing, which I talked in detail in one of the earlier lectures. So you need to have training programs meant for highly placed managers and those managers who are responsible for making sure that all systems and procedures are in place. These systems and procedures could be sophisticated, and therefore the managers who handle them are highly placed, and therefore we need to have training programs for people in decentralized organizations which are maybe at the medium level of or the middle level of the management, or maybe also high level of management. Conversely, when we are initiating training programs for organizations which are highly centralized, we generally kick off programs which are of basic nature, because we are dealing with the environment which is not unstable and which is not very highly variable, and the systems and procedures are in place. It only is that from time to time we have to brush up the knowledge of the people that are working for the organization, and we have to ensure that the element of variability does not work in a counterproductive manner for the organization, meaning the standard operating procedures remain in place, and these are the ones which were decided earlier, and in a very mechanistic way, people who are being trained will carry on these procedures for times to come. Wherever there are certain modifications mechanistically, those are to be talked about, and the people trained and motivated so that the service gets delivered each time and every time the way it has been delivered always. So we have seen how important it is for an organization to have the right setup or the right structure, and we also have seen how we can relate the structure to the environment, and especially the external environment, so that we can create an internal environment conducive to our requirements in order for us to fulfill our goals. And all this stems primarily from the purpose of the organization. So do not forget the two important aspects, meaning the purpose of the organization and the setup of the organization. Now, having talked about the first and the foremost determinant of the structure, let us now get on to the second one, which is strategies. I think it is very obvious that the kind of strategies that we have for our services, we shape up our setup. If we happen to be an organization which requires a lot of manpower, or human resource, so to say, then we need to have a very strong kind of a strategy dealing with human resource. That will lead to the training programs, and that will lead to further motivating those people in order for them to execute our service in the right manner each and every time. Strategies basically are game plans which are designed and formulated in order for us to achieve our goals, meaning the organization of goals. And these goals, again, stem from the purpose of the organization. And therefore, strategies, like I said, can have a direct bearing on the kind of structure the organization is going to have, or an organization already has. Let's talk about an organization which is a single product entity. The strategies are going to be fairly, I would say, simple and straightforward. And because of straightforward strategies, we may not like to have a very sophisticated kind of a structure of the organization. It could be a centralized kind of a structure, and the main thrust is on systems and procedures which already have been defined and are in place. And our objective, meaning the prime objective here, is to assure that those procedures get performed in just about the same manner each and every time those are performed. Let us now talk about an organization which happens to be a multiple product organization, meaning a company which deals with a level of differentiated products. Now, if that is the case, then the structure of the organization can be very different. It could be designed on division basis, meaning, the marketing division, the operations division, and, supply chain division, and so on and so forth. And it can still be flexible and decentralized, and that is the point. Why decentralized and flexible? Because the company is dealing with so many different products which are highly differentiated. And, well, even if they're not highly differentiated, the fact remains that the managers and other workers could have to deal with each other on a continuous basis about making any modifications in response to those differentiated features. There's a need for them to communicate with each other quickly and continuously. And at the same time, there's a need for them to make certain decisions which are to be taken at the spur of the moment. Remember, I talked about the strategic modifications which are required under these kind of circumstances. So it is by the virtue of having a strategy which deals with differentiated products that we have a structure of the organization which is decentralized and flexible. So you can also look at the structure from the strategic viewpoint. And when I say strategic viewpoint, meaning by having one particular kind of strategy that deals with differentiated products, that we have a decentralized and flexible kind of a structure. So you have seen that how structure is influenced by the kind of strategy or a combination of strategies that we have formulated for our products. Take the case of the customization. The demand patterns are such that customers demand so many different things at the same time, and therefore there's a need for you to be flexible, and there's a need for you to be very quick, and so on and so forth. When used as a strategic instrument, a differentiation and customization can have a direct bearing on the structure. It is for the simple reason that customization as a strategic instrument requires flexibility, and that flexibility makes it essential for us to have a decentralized organization. And this can be explained with the help of two big-time examples, without taking names of the organizations or, for that matter, the brand names, both dealing with fast food. Let's call one organization X and the other organization Y. X deals with the burgers and a host of other fast food items the world over, while the other one also the world over deals with cold sandwiches, also having a great array of menu of the sandwiches and related products. The former, which is company X, has tried to take in a very organized way the challenge of inseparability in order to be more effective and efficient while they deliver their service. And of course, along with the tangible product, which is the fast food. What they've done is, I'm talking about Corporation X. Do not lose sight of the fact. What they've done is, from the point the order is taken and the money is taken to the point the order is delivered, they have divided the whole chain of activities into two different important working groups. One is the order takers and the money takers, and once they have noted down the order, it automatically gets passed on to the food servers. Now, food servers, the other group, are the ones who prepare the food, who grill the food, cook the food, fry the food, starting with activities like opening of the cold bags of French fries and burger patties and so on and so forth, and then putting those into the deep fryers or onto the grills. They perform all those activities until the time it is all put together and the order is delivered to the customer. So what is happening is that this corporation has divided the chain of so-called inseparable activities into two distinct parts, and yet keeping it inseparable, they have delivered the order to the customer right then and there in the most efficient manner. Let us now take the example of Corporation Y, which deals in cold sandwiches, and the one that has kept the whole job very inseparable, and right from order taking and money taking to the point the sandwiches are prepared, the whole thing is done by the same person. What they've done is they've enlarged and enriched the job. The job which is divided at Corporation X stands very kind of consolidated and inseparable at Corporation Y, only because they do not deal with the kind of the wide variety of menu Corporation X does. So what is happening is that given the nature of the product and given the kind of service they are supposed to be giving to their customers, both organizations are working for the same end, and both have a lot of common features, and despite all those commonalities, they are still indulging into kind of a structure which is different. So this is a classical example of how the strategy can have a bearing on a structure of an organization. With this, we are now on to the third determinant of the structure of an organization, and that is the employment of technology. To a great extent, the technology is employed in any given corporation determines the kind of structure the company is going to have. I did talk about this factor in relation to hospitality industry. Depending upon the level of sophistication of the technology, you decide the kind of structure that you need to have. And in most of the cases, this employment of technology has its bearing on the support staff. The support staff gets kind of beefed up, and you have more people on that side, because they are the people who have to make sure that any changes that are taking place on the technology side are incorporated into the company's systems and procedures, and then those are passed on to all those divisions and all those points all over the world or nationally, depending upon the character of the company, being international or national. They decide the kind of structure they should have. So technology really has a bearing on the setup. If the technology happens to be very highly sophisticated, of course, again, the structure that's got to be decentralized because of the flexibility the structure requires. And if the employment of technology is of a level which is just about average, given the contemporary nature of the technological developments, then you may have a structure which is highly centralized, because again, you're dealing with systems and procedures already laid down, and people who are executing those on daily basis are pretty much conversant with those, and as a matter of fact, they know those the functions like the back of their hand, and therefore there is not a great need to have a decentralized function which should be flexible and which requires strategic modifications, so to say. So technology has a very important role to play when it comes to developing the structure of the organization. But explain this in few more words. You need to have real knowledge workers and knowledge managers if you are dealing with a very high level of sophisticated technology. You may not need those kind of knowledge workers and managers if you are dealing with an average level of technology. And that is why you need to have two different kinds of structures. For sophisticated technology, a decentralized and flexible kind of structure in which people can talk with each other, communicate with each other at ease, and they can work in informal kind of groups so that they can bring about the required modifications at the spot of the moment in response to the strategic changes taking place in the turbulent and tough environment that I talked about earlier. I think if we take the example of the medical systems or the very sophisticated scientific research, it answers all the questions, and we can be very comfortable with the understanding of what I'm talking about. However, if we are again dealing with the things like courier service or the fast food procedures, then the level of technology is not going to be as sophisticated as you require for the medical systems and scientific research. So that explains how the employment of technology can affect the kind of structure and organization that you are working for can have or should have. The last determinant of the structure is what you call human resources. I think, again, a very important determinant, we have to have the kind of human resources that are very compatible with the purpose and the objectives of the organization, and very strictly in response to that purpose and to the values and objectives, we have to hire people who can fulfill all those, meaning the purpose and the objectives. Depending upon the level of sophistication of the functions that you are performing, you need to have those specific kind of the human resource. You will go for very highly qualified people again, if as a matter of strategy and as a matter of choice, as a matter of purpose, you're dealing with the medical science or you're dealing with scientific research, then you need to have very highly qualified human resource. Conversely, you may not need to have that kind of resource with scientific and technical background if you're dealing with the other services that are delivered to an average person on daily basis. Again, the example of courier service or the fast food and insurance services, and even I would say the banking services. For example, if you are dealing with the things like ATMs on daily basis, you do need to have sophisticated technology, but that's not the kind of technology that you need to manipulate or the one which results in strategic modifications that you need to carry out by having informal kind of communication with your other team members on daily basis, or if not on daily basis, say very frequently. This again is kind of an activity which takes place on a consistent basis, day in, day out, maybe 24 hours a day and 7 days a week. So the level of technology is very consistent, and therefore the human resource that you need in order to maintain that may not be that highly sophisticated and that highly qualified. You may need to have the very highly qualified support staff, and I think this is a great example of the need for having the very good support staff, and the importance of the support staff, because they are the people who make all those the procedures fall in place, and then standardize those, and then make it possible for an automated teller machine perform on a daily basis for you to draw cash from there. So the human resource is a function of the level of sophistication of the technology that you employ, and the strategies that you have, and the environment in which you are operating. And I think it becomes very obvious that the compatible level of human resource is a function of all these factors that I've just talked about. So these are the four very important determinants of a setup or of a structure of an organization. And we have seen in a very rather learned in a very organized manner how these determinants determine the structure of an organization, and how that structure can be made compatible with the purpose of the organization. And I will go one step further back, how that purpose emanates and stems from the different kinds of characteristics of the services. So do not forget that we started talking about the tangibility spectrum, and then on to the characteristics, and then we related the characteristics with different places and points of the tangibility spectrum, and then we have tried to classify different levels of the services in order to have a better understanding as to how to deal with different kinds of services, how to manage those in light of the various levels of the characteristics of services. And we are just done with the first classification, which is the nature of the organization. So I'm trying to summarize the whole concept that we have discussed so far. And the nature of the organization is a function of the four different determinants. And to summarize once again, those are the external environment, the strategy, the employment of technology, and the human resource. So now let us get on to the second level of classification of services, which is the nature of service. And to further simplify it, let me show you a graphical presentation of two different sets of blocks, as you can see from the slide, that explain the whole concept. We have talked about two different kinds of the environments, the one being unstable and the other being stable. Let me summarize also, starting with the unstable organization, like I started talking about a few moments ago, for the simple reason that the unstable environment is more challenging and tougher, and that is why I give it more importance in terms of discussing it before I talk about the stable one. You can see on the right-hand side that we have unstable environment at the right and top, and it leads to the complex and sophisticated procedures, because the environment is sophisticated and complex. We need to have the systems and procedures which are developed in response to that kind of a complexity. And because of this complexity and the sophistication that we're dealing with, we generally tend to have decentralized organization which is flexible. And you will recall this flexibility basically stems from the fact that managers in a decentralized organization can have to communicate with each other, or different teams or among teams quite frequently, in order to bring about certain strategic modifications. And therefore these managers in decentralized organizations have to be given a certain level of empowerment, and it is because of that empowerment that they happen to be, and they turn out to be, effective managers at the end of the day, because they are empowered to take their own decisions, and they do not really wait for somebody else to make decisions on their behalf. Decentralized organization leads to training and development, which is very strategy critical. I think this is a very important point. that you like to train people who are middle level and high level managers. This is not to exclude the low level managers. All I'm saying is, because of the criticality of the training programs and because of the complexity and the sophistication that we're dealing with, we need to develop and train those people who generally are experienced and set to seek at higher levels of the hierarchy. And when we are dealing with this kind of a setup, we are by and large dealing with a differentiated kind of an organization. I mean, an organization which deals with differentiated products, not an organization which is differentiated. I must correct myself. An organization which deals with differentiated products. And we need to have quick communication and quick decision making when we are dealing with differentiated products, and the element of criticality plays its role in the area of differentiation as well. Do not forget the example of customization that I gave you. And also think very broadly. If you are selling more than one service, you need to have different kind of systems in place. And when you are working as a manager, overseeing the different products, then you need to have the people who can interact with each other very quickly at the spur of the moment. And that is why we are talking about these flexible strategy, critical procedures and structures. So when you are dealing with this kind of a scenario, you need to employ sophisticated technology, which is the next block downwards on the right-hand side of the set of this diagram. And you need to bring into play the sophisticated technology because you are dealing with sophistication and complexity. And then you see, if you go further down, you will see the human resource. And I think it goes without saying that you need to have a compatible human resource at all levels of the organization that can deal with the toughness of the environment, and that can deal with the sophistication of the systems and procedures, and that can deal with the sophisticated technology which makes everything possible when it comes to the goal realization. And you need to have training programs so that you can train and develop people and keep them motivated in order to be able to sell differentiated products and fulfill the purpose of the organization. So I think if you look at the arrows which are stemming from different blocks, things will become self-explanatory, because you will know what I've talked about, and the explanation will present itself in a very simplified form. Let us now take a look at the left side of this the presentation. And the left side basically represents a stable environment which is not that complex and may not be that sophisticated when it comes to the organizational structure, or when it comes to the strategy formulation, and when it comes to training and development. Let's go through these blocks very quickly, because now we know the phenomenon. In a stable organization, you have routines which are standard procedures carried out on daily basis, not only daily basis, from moment to moment. And because of the repetition of these the procedures, you need to have staff which is very highly trained, and the staff that does not make any mistakes while carrying out these routines, and really takes care in a very effective manner the challenge of the variability. You have a centralized organization, and centralized organization leads to training and development which revolve around the routines which I just talked about. And when you are a part of this kind of a scenario, you are not really dealing with products highly differentiated. I mean, those products could be differentiated, but not highly differentiated. And the level of differentiation does not really pose the challenges of your having to bring into play a very sophisticated level of technology, and therefore not the need to have the very sophisticated systems. All you need to deal with is the block which you see right underneath, and that is about, follow SOPs. All you need to do is follow the standard operating procedures, because you are operating in a stable environment. You're dealing with routines. You have a centralized organization. You have been trained and developed about those routines. You're not dealing with a very high and sophisticated level of differentiation, and you are also not employing technology which is very highly sophisticated in terms of the execution of your procedures. The technology could be sophisticated when it comes to developing those procedures, but once those are developed and the support staff has passed on those to you, and also that has undertaken the training and development program, then all you need to do is execute these day in and day out on the lines which already have been laid down. And the last block, which shows us the human resource, of course it goes without saying that we need to have human resource which is compatible with all these elements that I've just talked about. Let me further simplify your understanding relating all that I've talked about. You can also see these the four determinants of the organization structure in the shape of environment, strategy, technology, and HR. I have divided the levels of these blocks into four different parts. The first one starting with the stable or unstable environment, going right down to training and development of routines and training and development of strategy critical elements. As it becomes obvious that we are still dealing with environment when we are talking about these training and development programs, and all started with the environment being stable or unstable. And then we get into the second area or the second determinant, which is about strategies. And here you see that you will, with a lot of interest, realize that we are talking about something which is happening inside of the company because it relates strategies. And you are now formulating strategies in response to the environment that you're dealing with. It is either stable or unstable. Whatever it is, you are now dealing within the strategy area, and that deals with things inside of the organization. That is why these two blocks, both the sets, like the products being differentiated or not highly differentiated, and the standard operating procedures, or the need to have quick communication and decision making, only because you're dealing with systems and procedures which are highly sophisticated. You relate all that to the strategy. And then you get down to the next level, which is the employment of technology. And the technology, like I talked, is pretty easy to understand why we are talking about the level of employment of technology, because we basically are dealing with the structure, and the structure is being talked about in response to the environment, and then strategy, and then technology. The fourth element, which you see on the left-hand side of this presentation, is about human resource. And human resource in both the cases, meaning in both kinds of environments, whether stable or unstable, has got to be compatible. And I think there's no further need to get into details about the quality and about the type of the human resource that we need to be able to respond to these two different kinds of environments. With this, our understanding of the first level of classification of the characteristics is complete. And now in the next lecture, I will start talking about the remaining levels of classification, which are the nature of service and the customer relationship, the level of demand, and the kind of delivery system that we may have in order to deliver our the service products. And with that, we shall be completing our understanding of the characteristics of the services in relation to the tangibility spectrum and the levels of classification that we need to have to answer our questions about characteristics. And don't forget, the questions about characteristics arise because there are different levels and degrees of characteristics inherent in every given service. Not every service has the same level and degree of characteristics, and that is why we need to answer those questions with the help of the understanding of the classification of services, of which we have just talked about the first one today, meaning the nature of the organization in relation to the environment and determinants of environment and so on and so forth. So I shall be talking about the remaining levels in the next lecture. Thank you very much for your patience, and I look forward to talking with you guys in the next lecture. Allah Hafiz.